Huddle Up Moms began in Southwest Virginia with the mission of empowering mothers through education, connection, and support. Through services from a diaper bank to peer support to pre and postnatal education, HUM changes lives. The stories you're about to see were recorded at the 5 Points Music Sanctuary in Roanoke. Thanks to these brave women for being willing to share these stories.
Our next storyteller is a Roanoke native, devoted wife to Andy Cotton Jr., and proud mother to their son, Josiah Quest. Her life and work have always centered on service, community, and strengthening families. With more than a decade of experience supporting youth, families, and community well being, she has worked across education, nonprofits, and higher education to help individuals navigate important life transitions. She previously served as a trustee for Roanoke City Public Schools, advocating for student success, family engagement, and equitable opportunities. As a preeclampsia survivor, she brings both professional expertise and lived experience to her work, supporting maternal health and well-being. Through Huddle Up Moms, she is passionate about creating spaces where mothers feel informed, supported, and empowered to advocate for themselves and their families. She's also the founder of Transition Life Consulting and co-founder of Trifecta Inc., organizations dedicated to leadership development, youth empowerment, and community growth. She's honored to serve mothers and families throughout the Roanoke Valley. Hands together, leaning in, Natasha Saunders Cotton.
8 months, I fought for my life. I thought my soul was ready to exit. I had dreamed of being a mother. Despite the odds, I became one. Despite experiencing singleness until 35, despite PCOS, despite a threatened miscarriage, despite gestational diabetes, despite having a mom harass me for years to get pregnant by what I guessed was going to be meiosis or a sperm bank for 37 years, I became a mother. But I had my doubts of how long I would be able to live out this dream. 4 emergency room visits, cold nights sitting in the ER, guilt of having to leave my newborn, and resentment that what I had to face, whatever waited for me, I had to do it alone. Misdiagnosis after misdiagnosis, or should I say no diagnosis, just dismissed. Sent home while my body was quietly failing, left with no words to explain to my husband, to my family, my friends, just left to suffer. The symptoms came in waves: abdominal pain, crushing headaches, fevers, chills, each time just a different enough experience to justify another trip to the ER. I will never forget the night I made my 3rd trip. I butt dialed my best friend, Noelle. She must have sat there silently for what seemed like eternity while I wailed in pain and in agony. When we finally spoke, she said, "I didn't know you could speak in tongues." My heavenly language with my father as I cried out, not knowing what to pray for, but who to pray to. He knew he would be able to decode what my body was in desperate need of, that my mind didn't have the words to describe. I sat in that chaotic ER for hours while I took in the smell of illness and felt the cold IV drip until it dripped no more. Fevers, chills, pain, headache. I sat for 6 hours later with a dried up IV in my arm, which my students later told me could have blown out a vein. No big deal, I guess. As doctors changed shift, I was finally called back. A doctor who said I had all the signs of sepsis and was shocked I hadn't been seen sooner. He tried to rule out everything he could. He checked me for Lyme disease and even meningitis. When the words meningitis and spinal tap left his lips, I was triggered by my last spinal tap I had, an epidural, and I called my sister to hold my hand during the procedure. Negative results. A sigh. A sigh of relief, but the frustration rushed back in. I went home again, still in pain, still searching for answers. 3 days later, on my 4th trip to the ER, and 4 months postpartum, I remember a doctor telling me, "You're too far postpartum for this to be related to having a baby." I believed him. Sent home still with no answers. A few days later, I boarded a plane to Oregon for a speaking engagement with my husband and infant, chewing ibuprofen and holistic tablets just to keep the headache at bay. I can still taste the bitter chalkiness of those pills I had to dissolve under my tongue. God had opened this amazing door of an opportunity, and though I was suffering, I do not believe in turning down what God has orchestrated. As the plane took off, I remember thinking, what if this high altitude triggers more pain, or even worse, an aneurysm? I really thought I might die on this trip and never make it home. 3 months later, I began donating to Huddle Up Moms, and everything became full circle. Don't look at me, Emily. What I didn't know then, and what I've since learned as an advocate for Huddle Up Moms, is that I was still suffering from postpartum preeclampsia, a silent and deadly condition that can claim most women's lives, most taking place between 45 days to 365 days after birth. The reason why we're here today. The same condition I had been diagnosed with before leaving the hospital 7 months prior. You see, after giving birth, I stayed longer than most moms. I had hemorrhaged, which was a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But let's just say that I thought my soul was going to leave my body that day. My newborn was being monitored for high bilirubins levels, which ironically I find is a blessing now. By day 5, I was discharged, but my baby wasn't. I stayed in the hospital, no longer considered a patient, which in hindsight, as I mentioned, I consider a blessing and maybe is what saved my life. As the doctor on call made his rounds, I was just told that I had slight hypertension and said we would revisit it at my 6-week checkup. He didn't explain the danger. He did not tell me what to watch for, though I was already severely swollen and retaining fluid. The next day, after being discharged, I woke up from a nap and my entire right side was numb. From head to toe, I tried to convince myself it was anxiety. First time mom jitters, as my face felt stiff and my limbs tingled. But something I just couldn't shake. My husband didn't let it dismiss either, and neither did the amazing nurse we had on call. Before the nurse wheeled me to triage, where I was readmitted, I had to make one more phone call. My OBGYN, Dr. Nunziato, who was on vacation after already staying late, sorry to her husband, to deliver my baby, answered her phone and gave me the words to say to be taken seriously as a woman, but even more importantly, as a Black woman. That night, a doctor who looked like me, because representation does matter, told me the truth. I had postpartum preeclampsia, and she was shocked I had been discharged without treatment. Needless to say, I didn't sleep after that. Imagine being in labor for 3 days, 2 of which were unmedicated, having a blood transfusion, having to stay in the hospital for 8 days total while your son is being monitored, which is also terrifying. And now you have just experienced what felt like a mild stroke and have been told you have a life-threatening condition. And now on top of that, you are sleep deprived, making sure your son's goggles don't fall off his face through the night under the lamp because the nurses made you believe your child will go blind otherwise. That is false, by the way. And also because you're shooketh that if you close your eye for one moment, you're not going to wake up again. It has been 2 years, and the fear of death induced anxiety I experienced before bedtime is still at an all-time high. I was terrified I wouldn't live to raise my child. Women who experience this condition are 2 to 4 times more likely to die of cardiovascular disease and have a shortened lifespan. I am terrified I will not live to raise my child. And don't get me started on the fear of even thinking to try for a second bundle of joy. On my 6-week checkup, my blood pressure seemed stable. I was taken off medication. I thought that chapter was closed. As you have heard, it wasn't. And like most moms, I kept pushing, putting myself last, telling myself I'm tripping or overreacting. This must be normal. I didn't know that ER doctors can be undereducated as it relates to childbirth. I didn't know ER doctors didn't know that a woman is not in the clear of preeclampsia until she is 1 year postpartum. I didn't know that I should have fought harder and got back in with my OBGYN regularly. I didn't know that childbirth and the months to follow would be a near-death experience. I'm here today because my body pushed through. I'm here today because my soul didn't let go. And I'm here today because of my God. But too many mothers don't get that ending. And as for the women who look like me, the risk of being dismissed and dying is even higher. I share my story so another mother will trust her body, so another family will push for care, so being heard becomes the rule, not the exception. Thank you.